welcome back to this series. This is going to be the third video in a series of 7 videos on how to chart your cycle, how to track it every month to tell what your body's telling you. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details. These are the signs that your body's giving you every cycle that you are going to take and chart and keep track of every cycle so that you have an overall view of what your health is doing. It's a chart you can take to your doctor if something's off. It's a chart to let you know everything's going well, kind of just to give you an overall view. Okay, so this first video on the nitty-gritty stuff is going to be on your basal body temperature. Now that is your core temperature first thing when you wake up in the morning. It's going to rise as the day goes on, so you're going to want to take it first thing in the morning. Okay, so we've got a few rules. I'm going to give those to you in this video. Follow these rules for taking your temperature every cycle and you'll get a good idea of what your health is doing with those temperatures. What you're going to need is 1, you're going to need an alarm to wake you up in the morning. 2, you're going to need a digital basal thermometer that reads to the 100th of a degree. Okay, so those you can find, either there's one linked, an Amazon link below here in the description. I use that one, or you can go to any pharmacy, local pharmacy, Walmart, Walgreens, whatever is in your area, and you can usually pick one up there. You're also going to need, third, a chart to keep track of your temperatures on. So if you are doing coaching with me, you are going to receive a PDF file that you can print off. Go ahead and print off one now because we're going to use it in this video session as a practice. Okay, we're going to kind of run through it. We're going to work through it together. And then you can also print out one per cycle for your personal use. Okay, or you can use an app. The app that I use is called OVA Graph, OVA Graph. It's an app. This is a disclaimer, I do not use this app to rely on it to tell me when I've ovulated, or when, if I'm avoiding pregnancy, what days to avoid, or when I should have intercourse to achieve pregnancy. I do not use this app for that. I have the tools to know what my body's telling me. I literally just use it to keep track instead of using paper to keep track. Either way is a great option. Do it either way. Okay? So, if you're receiving coaching with me, you can start off using paper for personal use. You are going to also use the app so that as I'm coaching you, I have access to that app as well, and I can see what your body's doing so that when you have a question, I'm clued in, I am familiar with where you're at in your cycle, I can be right there right away for you. You can keep using it after we're done, or you can switch and just use paper. Either way, it's totally up to you. I'm also going to give you a couple of other useful tools that you might find useful, just depending on where you're at in life and your certain circumstances. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Rule number 1 when taking your temperature is to take it at the same time every morning. This is a little bit of a tricky spot, okay? It's hard to get up at the same time every morning. When you're used to getting up, say at 5 o'clock for work on a weekday, and then you'd like to sleep until 11 on the weekends, you're like, oh, that's impossible. That's not going to happen for me. However, it's totally acceptable to set your alarm for 5 a.m. every day of the week and fall right back to sleep on the weekends. Don't do it on the weekdays because I don't want to be responsible for you missing work. Okay, so anyways, same time every morning. This is going to become a habit. It is a habit that you have to get into, and it's something you have to get used to, and you're not going to like it at first. Trust me, it's not fun at first, but it's just going to become a habit. I've fallen asleep with the thermometer in my mouth, and the great thing about the digital one is that it tells you the last temperature. So you can, press a button and it'll recall that temperature. So when you wake up for the day, you can press it and it's right there. You haven't missed it. Okay, so same time every morning. And the reason being for this is that some women notice if they miss by, even 10 minutes, some women are really sensitive. Their temperature is off. And like it'll rise, as you get up and you start activity. Even if you just get up to go pee and you come back to bed, your temperature could be higher than it actually is because your activity level or you're even just being awake has brought your body temperature up. And so that's not going to give you an accurate picture for your cycle. It has to be first thing you roll over in bed, you stick that thermometer in your mouth, and that's the temperature you're getting for the day. Same time every morning. However, here's a little bit. Get used to your body and what it is accepting as normal for you. So I can get away with about half an hour on either side. I can say I have my alarm set for 6 a.m. and I'm going to take my temperature at 6 a.m. every morning. If I all of a sudden am awake at 5:30 a.m., I can go ahead and take it then. Or if I miss my alarm and I wake up at 6:30 instead, I can take it then. For me, my body gives me that leeway. I can also get up and go pee and come back to bed and my temperature's maybe, 1/100th of a degree off or something, which is not that big of a deal. Or it may not even be off. I don't really know because it doesn't seem to make that much difference for me. You have to figure out what's normal for your body. And that's why it's so important to take these first few cycles to get to know your body. Do not rely on it. If you're trying to use it as a method of a natural birth control, do not rely on this method alone for the first few cycles. While you are getting to know your body, just allow yourself that time and that space. Okay. Also, the second thing, so we have 3 rules. That's the first rule. Take it at the same time every morning. The second rule is going to be to get 3 consecutive hours of sleep before you take your temperature. So if my alarm is set for 6 a.m., I need to have slept from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. for it to be accurate. You get less sleep than that and it throws your temperatures off. It's not going to be accurate. Now, I use this as a method of natural family planning, natural birth control when I am postpartum, when I'm breastfeeding a baby. And trust me, it's easier when it's combined with cervical fluid, but temperature alone is super hard when you're postpartum. When you're up with a baby at night, or even if you're just someone who's a restless sleeper, or let's say you have a hard time getting up at the same time every morning. There is a tool that I have not used personally. However, people that I trust and whose opinions I respect in this community, they have used it and they have loved it. I have friends currently using it. It is called Temp Drop. TEMP Drop. And that is a tool that you can wear at night and it will constantly track your temperature to give you an accurate reading of what your basal temperature is every 24 hours. So that is a tool you can look into if you have trouble with these first 2 rules. Okay, so remember that, temp drop. Okay, third rule is placement of the thermometer. Do not put it under the tip of your tongue. It's not warm enough there. It's not an accurate reading right there. Lift up your tongue and put it back under your tongue. You have 2 heat pockets under the back of your tongue. Put it there. A digital basal thermometer is going to beep after about a minute when it's got an accurate reading. So leave it back there. You may fall asleep with it in, or you may not. When it beeps, take it out, put it down, read it when you get up, and you're ready to chart it for the day. Placement is super important. However, you may be one of those women that is finding you're not getting a consistent reading when you take it from your mouth. You can also use the digital basal thermometer vaginally. I've never done it. I've never needed to. My mouth temperatures have been consistent. So just find what's normal for your body. Like I said, take these first few cycles when you're learning this to find out what your body says is normal for you. What works for you? Take these first few cycles. Don't use it for anything else except to get to know your body. Okay, so those are the first 3 rules. We're going to talk about then what do those temperatures mean? You're tracking these every day. You're either putting them on paper, you're putting them in an app, and now you have, we call it a forest of temperatures. It's just a bunch of dots. If you're tracking on the app or on paper, it's going to look something like this. These are the temperatures. Okay, so pull out your PDF file that you've printed off. If you're coaching with me, it's a blank chart. It looks like this. I'm going to teach you how to chart those temperatures and then how to understand what they're telling you. So pull out that blank chart and we're going to walk through a typical chart, what a typical woman's cycle is going to look like temperature wise. Okay, so first at the top, you're going to see cycle number. If this is your first time charting, you're going to put cycle number 1. All right, cycle length, we don't know that yet. We'll put that in at the end. Follicular phase length, we don't know that. Remember, we talked about it when we talked about our cycle overview and the luteal phase length. We don't know those yet. Those are numbers we're going to go back and we're going to put in afterwards. They're purely for us to go back and look, are they consistent? Are things normal? Are things off? And that's going to clue us into whether or not our health is off or doing great. Okay, so here we are. Cycle day, you're going to see up here, the chart that I've given you goes up to 40 days. Now that's longer than you should need. However, we talked about delayed ovulation and that could make your cycle longer. If for whatever reason it goes past 40 days, then just use another paper, use another chart, and then cycle day 1 would be cycle day 41. Okay, this though should be longer than you need for most of your cycles. Under that, you're going to put the date. So what month is it? What day of the month? Super easy to go back. When somebody says, when was the last day of your period? You've written it down here. Okay, day of the week. I just find that that's super helpful. You remember, oh, it was a Thursday when this happened or whatever. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about this time, is your waking temperatures. This chart goes from 96 up to 99. That's a really big range. You're going to find that, and we're going to talk about what's normal and what's abnormal and what that means. You're going to find that it stays within 2 degrees usually from your low temperatures to your high temperatures. You're not usually going to jump around that much, but some women have lower temperatures and some women have higher temperatures just as a general average. And so that's why I've given you such a large chart here. Okay, so pull out this chart, pull out a pen or a pencil. Go ahead and pause the video if you need time to get those. I am going to give you temperatures, and I'm going to give you the cycle day, and I'm going to give you the temperature, and then you are going to take that chart and you are going to circle that temperature. Now this is a little bit tedious as we're drawing our forest, but I'm going to explain it to you and walk you through it after we do that. Okay, so go ahead, pause it if you need to grab your supplies, and then jump right back in. We're going to do the tedious work and help it cement in our minds. Okay, so on cycle day 1, the temperature is 97.7. So for you, locate the 97 and then up to 7. Put a circle around the 7. I know you can't really see it in the video, but if you're looking at it, it makes sense. 97, not the 7 below it, because that goes with the 96. 97, go up to the 7 above it. That is 97.7. On cycle day 2, it was another 97.7. On cycle day 3, we're also at 97.7 again. However, on cycle day 4, the temperature is 97.8. Cycle day 5 is 97.8. Cycle day 7, did I say 5? Cycle day 6, there we are. Cycle day 6 is 97.8. Cycle day 7 is 97.8. And then cycle day 8 is 97.7. Cycle day 9 is 97.7. Cycle day 10 is 97.6. Cycle day 11 is 97.6. Cycle day 12 is 97.5. Cycle day 13 is 97.5. Cycle day 14 is going to be 97.8. Cycle day 15 is 98.4. So there's a little bit of a jump. Cycle day 16 is 98.5. Cycle day 17 is 98.5. Cycle day 18 is 98.5. Cycle day 19 is also 98.5. Cycle day 20 is 98.6. Cycle day 21 is 98.3. Cycle day 22 is 98.2. Cycle day 23 is 98.4. Cycle day 24 is 98.4. Cycle day 25 is 98.4. cycle day 26 is 98.1. Cycle day 27 is 98.5. Cycle day 28 is 98.4. Cycle day 29 is 98.0. So 98 even. And that's the end of this typical cycle. They might notice the next day their temperature is 97.6, and they would know when they woke up that morning that that was the day they were going to get their period. So whenever you see a big drop in your temperatures, you're going to see that that's the day, or the day before sometimes, that you get your period. So it helps to be prepared, which is maybe my favorite aspect of tracking my temperatures, is that I know what day I'm gonna get my period. No more surprises. It's great. Okay, so this is not useful when you're trying to do it for birth control. This is not going to be the most helpful piece of information that you're going to learn, the most helpful sign you're going to track. This is more helpful if you're trying to achieve pregnancy. This is helpful if you're going to want to know what your hormones are doing. This is helpful if you're going to want to know your thyroid and what its health is doing. This is just helpful to know that you are having a regular cycle. Now, it's confirming ovulation. Do you remember when we jumped from the 97s to the 98s? That signaled ovulation. So it confirms that you actually ovulated. You may have a cycle where you don't see a jump. That means you didn't ovulate that cycle. It's an anovulatory cycle. It can be normal here and there. Every woman has an anovulatory cycle every once in a while. It is not normal for that to happen every time. So if you are seeing cycles with a repeated pattern of no obvious rise, then you need to see your healthcare provider and talk about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about what this forest of temperatures actually means. Okay, so I am also going to, before we get into that, I'm going to say that you might have one temperature that seems off. We're going to talk about that more in detail, what makes it off at the end. But if it seems off, for example, you're in the 97s and all of a sudden you have a temperature that's way high, or more likely for me, it's way low. I'm like, where did that come from? It's a fluke, more than likely. Just don't include it in your chart. Just draw a line through that day, go on to the next day. Don't include it, okay? If you're using the Ovograph app, you can say, do not include this temperature in the chart today, okay? You can still track it, but just don't count it as one of your actual temperatures. And the reason is this. You're going to draw a cover line. Now, if you're using the app, it draws a cover line for you. Like I said, I don't rely on that. The cover line is usually pretty accurate, but I don't always rely on it because it's not always. If you have this knowledge, use your brain, use the knowledge. You know what's going on with your body. You don't have to rely on a piece of equipment that might get it wrong, because the app has gotten it wrong for me. And you don't have to rely on that if you know what's going on. Okay, so here's how we're going to draw a cover line. In the app, the cover line looks like this. It's the line that separates your low temperatures from your high temperatures. The rules for drawing the cover line, I'm going to read them to you to make sure that we're on the same page. Number one, the first rule is after your period ends, you're going to start looking for your temperatures to rise. They're going to stay the same, remember, for the follicular phase, and then when ovulation happens and therefore starts the luteal phase, you're going to see a rise in your temperature. So start looking for a rise in temperatures. When you see that rise in temperature, go back and see that there is a cluster of 6 preceding temps that are lower. Okay, rule number 2, the first day that your temperature rises above the highest of that cluster of 6 temperatures, go back and highlight the 6 temperatures before that, and then draw the cover line 1/10 of a degree above the highest of that cluster. So for example, this is the chart that I read off to you, that you now have a forest of temperatures. Do you see where it rose? Look on your chart. Do you see the day that it rose? It rose on day 15. So you're going to go back 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. Those are your preceding 6 temperatures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you're going to look, which is the highest temperature in this chart? You're going to draw a 1/10 of a degree. So the highest temperature in those 6 temperatures is 97.8. So a 1/10 of a degree would be 97.9. You're going to draw your cover line there. And this just separates your low temperatures from your high temperatures. Okay? That's how you're going to know when you look at your temperatures, the one after it, that's what we call a peak day. Okay? Now, the day before peak day, so the day before your temperature rose, is typically the day that you ovulate. That is not always true, but it is typically true. Now, I'll explain why it's not always true when we get into the birth control video and how to use it as a natural method of family planning and birth control. But as a typical rule with temperatures, you're going to assume that day 14 is when you ovulate, and then day 15 is your peak day. So we're not getting into any of the other signs in this video. We're purely talking about temperatures. Okay, some differences that you might notice in this chart. You'll notice that we had a very obvious shift, very obvious low temperatures that shifted very quickly, like overnight, to very obvious high temperatures. And you're going to notice those temperatures stayed high in the luteal phase and then dropped when the follicular phase started, the day you got your period. Now, this is directly related to your progesterone. When your temperatures are low is signaling that your progesterone is low. You're going to see that peak when your progesterone goes up. It stays up, and then the day that you get your period is when it drops, or usually the day before, whatever. It signals that your body is not pregnant. However, if you were to get pregnant during this cycle, your numbers would stay elevated. And so that would be a key, or your first clue to knowing that you were pregnant before you even took a pregnancy test. Okay, so let's then go back and talk about that shift. So like we said, you in this chart saw that there was an obvious shift. You personally may sometimes or typically see a slow rise. It literally rises very slowly. You may see like it's like a stair step rise in your temperature. That is still your progesterone rising. It is still ovulation. You may see it rise and then fall back and then rise again. That is still normal. Do not worry about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about some things that can throw off your temperature now. So like I said, not taking it at the same time every morning, not getting consistent sleep. There are some other things like illness, stress, alcohol the night before, traveling. One woman, she had delayed ovulation. Her temperatures were thrown off because there was an earthquake while she was sleeping that night. So environmental factors can throw off your temperature. So keep those in mind when you're taking your temperature in the morning. Did you have alcohol the night before? Did you not get enough sleep? Did you not take it at the same time? Anyways, you could also have a fever. I had that example once. I woke up and my temperature was 101. I was like, that's not a normal basal body temperature. Sure enough, I had the flu. So those are reasons that your temperature may not be doing what you think it should be doing. Now, this is a little bit tricky to learn, especially if you're going to start tracking on paper. However, once you get the hang of it, it's not going to be that hard. It's going to become second nature to you, and I know you're going to get this. So do not get stressed out and frustrated. I totally did that when I first started learning this, and you don't need to. That's why I say over and over again, take these first few cycles while you're learning it to just learn your body. Play around with when you can take your temperature. Play around with what's normal. Can you have alcohol the night before? Do you need to cut it off at a certain amount of time? Anyways, find out what is normal for you and use that as your guide to taking your temperatures.